بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على رسوله الكريم وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين ما بعد. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome back to a brand new podcast episode with your host Shabir, here connecting with all of our feed listeners and viewers all across the world. MashaAllah, I hope you've been enjoying the podcast so far, and I know for a fact that you're all going to enjoy today's session, inshallah. We've got an amazing guest, someone that I've met but I haven't been able to connect with enough, but I'm sure something's telling me today in this episode we're going to connect very well, inshallah. Again, it's a guest from the US. MashaAllah, we've had many guests from the US already, as you've already heard so far. But this guest is very, very special indeed. None other than Mufti Muhammad Wasim Khan, aka Mufti MWK. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. You brand me better than I brand myself.
How are you, Sheikh UK?
Alhamdulillah, I'm doing good. How are you?
Alhamdulillah. Thank you so much for coming once again to the UK and taking your time out to be here with us in the Feed studio. It's a pleasure to have you.
I think it warrants our first meeting, though. I think I should explain what happened in our first meeting.
Yeah, go on.
So I'm at a fundraiser, and there's a poetry jam that's going on there.
Oh yeah.
And,
wait, not just a normal poetry jam. You have who's
you
there?
have Ahmad Bukhatir there, right? You have
right?
the guy
The
Ahmad
guy.
Bukhatir there, and I'm sitting I'm a speaker there, and I see Sheikh Shabir in the crowd, and we had never met before that.
No.
And while Ahmad Bukhatir is looking for someone to say a poem, I just go there, grab his hand, say "Assalamu alaikum, how are you?" and drag him to the stage while he's pulling back. So that was our first meeting, alhamdulillah.
What a meeting that was, alhamdulillah. No, it's a pleasure to have you back here in the UK. And yeah, we've got a few things that we wanted to discuss in this episode. Of course, but first and foremost, I'm gonna kind of like just throw you in the deep end straight away. Okay, don't worry, it's nothing crazy.
It's payback.
Yeah, you know what? I should have thought about something like that. But just because like everyone hears this term Mufti, yeah, like people have come across or they've listened to Mufti before, but a lot of people don't actually know what does that mean. Like you hear someone's an alim, you hear someone's a sheikh, right? But then you hear Mufti. So what is actually the difference between your like an alim or a sheikh or someone that you call like Maulana, so many different titles, and then you have someone who's a Mufti. So give us, inshallah, an introduction to that.
So before I explain the difference in the terminology, I think it's important to understand how the different major schools of Islamic theology, they disseminate their information. There's many Islamic universities and schools around the globe. They all can predominantly trace their origins to pretty much 3 or 4 locations. One is in the subcontinent, one is in Saudi Arabia, Medina University, and the third is Jamia Azhar. And alhamdulillah, I had the opportunity of going to all 3 and seeing all 3 of them. So the idea is that the ones in Saudi Arabia and in Egypt, their focus is more of from a secular perspective. So their demarcation is like a bachelor's, a master's, a PhD, X, Y, and Z. So over there, someone that has accomplished the master's program or has done the PhD is generally considered a scholar there.
Right.
Whereas in the subcontinent and schools that are affiliated with the subcontinent, anyone who's done the 7-year Dars Nidami program is called an alim, right? So this is the terminology of understanding what is a scholar, what is not a scholar.
Sure.
Now, once you understand that one is a scholar, one is not, the second thing is that you'll hear terms like ustad, you'll hear terms like sheikh, you'll hear terms like maulana and mufti. Now, what's the differentiation? So generally, someone who is called an ustad, and this is people in our day and age, because back in the day, an ustad was considered a very prestigious title. A hafid was considered someone who had hundreds and thousands of ahadith memorized. Sure. It wasn't just someone who had the Quran memorized. So these were really prestigious titles. Ibn Hajar is called Hafid Ibn Hajar. But in our days, a hafid is just someone who memorized the Quran. And it's just considered as a normal person. Whereas in those days, hafid was you just didn't get called hafid.
Yeah.
You had to be the don of dons to be called a hafid.
You
had creme de creme, right? You have to be like elite to be called a hafid. So that's the terminology difference. So then you have the ustad, which is basically someone who studied a little bit with, in any capacity, but they may not be a scholar, but they're there as a teacher, right? They're there to educate, because we need all levels of people, right? The second category you'll hear is someone being called a sheikh. Now, sheikh does not necessarily mean someone is a scholar. In the Arabic language, sheikh is also an elderly person.
Yeah, yeah.
Wabuna sheikhun kabir,
Mm.
right? Our father is an elderly man. Now, sheikh may refer to a scholar, may not refer to a scholar. In today's day and age, it's a term that's, if someone is a little bit of a speaker, or someone's a little elderly, or someone has a really thick accent, you're a sheikh now,
Or a lot
right?
of money as well.
A lot of money. Oh yeah, yeah. That's, you have the filthy rich sheikhs as well, right? We call them milkshakes, mulukka sheikh, right? The ones who run the countries. So that's where the sheikh terminology comes. So a sheikh can be a scholar, cannot be a scholar. Then you have a maulana, right? Maula in the Arabic language has close to 17 or 20 different meanings to it. One of the meanings is someone who's like a guardian or protector, or someone who's, that kind of guides you, right? The Prophet ﷺ called Zayd radiallahu anhu maula, anta akhuna wa maulana, right? In the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. And there's different places in the Quran it comes. So now a Maulana is someone generally who's been through the 7-year traditional system, right? Where
Right.
they've gone through the different Quran, Hadith, and so on and so forth. This is called a Maulana, an Alim, a scholar in that capacity. And then you have someone who's called a Mufti. And a Mufti is something that's been used over the centuries, right? The term Maulana may not be used throughout history from beginning till end. Alim was generally used from beginning till end. Al-ulama warathatul anbiya, the Prophet of Allah uses this terminology. But the term Mufti was generally used from the time of the Sahaba onwards. This was Mufti al-Madina, right? These are the people, Sab'a Fuqaha al-Madina. So a Mufti is a specialist in Islamic jurisprudence and its laws, right? The edicts, that when you have a law, something, for example, test tube babies, or something that deals with beatboxing, for example. These are contemporary issues where you're not going to find Quran or Hadith explicitly define it, or the marijuana issue that everyone likes to ask about. But these are not explicit issues. So our job is to reflect on Quran, Hadith, draw a sculpture from there, and be able to interpret today's laws based on the reflection of the prophetic capacity. And I just want to clarify on the discussion that we were speaking about. I was with Dr. Yasser Qadi a few weeks ago, and he made an interesting comment on the differentiation between the university approach to Islam and the Dars Nidami, or the traditional approach. So he mentions the subcontinent approach. He mentioned, and I concur with him wholeheartedly, he mentioned that the university system is more compartmentalized, whereas the traditional system is more encyclopedic. So whereas if someone has done a bachelor's or a master's in hadith or fiqh, in that area, they have a very solid footing. Whereas the other areas, they may not have as solid footing. Whereas in the traditional system, you have an encyclopedic system, but that also comes at the cost of not also being a specialist in particular fields at times. So everything has its benefits or its losses, and I think it's very important, as Abdullah bin Mubarak rahimahullah says, that isnad min ad-din, فانظر ممن تأخذون الدين, that your chain and your link, your credibility is from deen. So know and vouch the people you're getting knowledge from, is because the end of times, أضلوا فأضلوا, the people, الناس اتخذوا رؤوسا جهالا, people will take people who are not worthy of being those to spout out ilm and scholarly content, and people will adhere to them, and that's where misguidance will spread from.
And that's the point that I think we're gonna come to, inshallah. But that was a really deep beginning to the podcast. I think it's the deepest beginning intro we've had. So I hope for those of you who are listening, you're still with us, right? Because even I wasn't expecting all of that. MashaAllah, brilliant. Right. So another question, which is, at what stage in your life in your studies, did you kind of think, you know what, this is what I want to go into. I want to become a mufti, or I want to specialize in jurisprudence, in fiqh, because of course, you could have taken any route, right? You could have said Quran, tafsir, mufassir, hadith, muhaddith, it could have been anything. But at what point did you feel like I want to go into this, and what was the main driving factor behind that?
So I was born in Dallas, Texas, but I grew up in Saudi.
Okay.
My father was the general manager of Korean Airlines in Jeddah Airport, and our home was relatively near Jeddah.
Right.
That means that any scholar that would come for Hajj or Umrah, they would stop at our homes, and we would do their hospitality. And my father was just a normal businessman, clean shaved, worked a corporate job, speaks Korean fluently, which is pretty interesting.
Wow.
Yeah, it's pretty dope. And growing up, I just saw scholars all the time at home.
Okay.
And I just saw the reverence that my parents had for them. And I remember I was about 4 or 5 years ago. We were by Bab Malik Fahad. It was towards the left stair area, and there was Zamzam there. And my mother gave me Zamzam, and she said, "Do dua to Allah to make you a Hafiz, Alim, and a Mufti." And I had no idea what these things meant. So I did dua, and I drank it, but obviously I was a kid and I
Yeah,
was
yeah.
lazy. So I said, "Ya Allah, make me a Hafiz, Alim, Mufti in one day." Right? So that was my childish part to it. And Allah has accepted two parts, but not the third part. Didn't I haven't finished my hifd yet, but inshallah one day.
Inshallah.
So now, uh, growing up, I constantly saw my parents around scholars and serving them. There was one place that I was in Chicago and I finished from a lecture, and a few people came and they were appreciating it. And there was a scholar, a very senior scholar, sitting there, and he said, "Anything you see from this young man is nothing to do with his kamal or his qualification. It was the fact that his parents straightened the shoes of scholars and did their khidmah, that somebody's dua hit them, somebody's dua touched them." As I was growing and through my studies, one thing that really I could not grasp my mind around was the concept of why is something Hanafi, Shafi, Malik. I just could not grasp it, right? That you have Quran, Hadith. You know, why do we align ourselves with one of these things? Why is it so important? And then you'd hear people be like, "Well, imagine there are four roads to Jannah," and it was like these silly examples, right? And it just didn't make sense. And
Yeah.
to me, one of the things, sure, I was inspired, but then I also went to school and I also had influences around me that deterred me from getting closer to Allah as well. But it was the idea that I did not want a middleman to explain my religion to me. I wanted to get to it myself, and I wanted to really soak it in on a personal level. So that confusion of understanding our fiqh was one of the main reasons that made me want to specialize in it. And plus, fiqh is all about debating and evidence, and which American doesn't like debating?
Yeah, true, true, true. Well, that's amazing because I know that even at a young age, mashallah, like you presented even a paper at the university. I'm going to bring it up, right? And the paper was on out of all things. Like it's interesting because you said that things are developing, and that's one thing I did want to speak about as well. Like fiqh is not just like it hasn't just remained as it is, in the sense that there's new issues every single day, especially nowadays in the day and age of like technology, with social media, like things are so advanced now. So as scholars, obviously you have to keep up, right? But so here you are as someone a lot more kind of younger in your studies, and then you present a paper on abortion. So, what, like, okay, we'll speak about why that was, like, because there's always a reason, right? There's always a reason, like, there must be
It seems
an
like there's a
area.
sinister part to this question.
There's always a reason. So let's talk about that, and then also maybe you could just quickly, briefly speak about your personal, like, what your research was on and how long that took you, because a lot of people, they just kind of see the end result. They see the end result, like, okay, this is the fatwa. He's given a fatwa, or he's come up with a conclusion, but then they don't know actually how much effort and how much research was done behind the scenes. So let's get an insight into the mind of Mufti MWK.
So though that paper was one of the more special papers I've written in my life, I have to be honest though. I remember I was 21, I believe, or 22 that time, and I was teaching in Chicago, and I get this email from AMJA saying that anyone who presents a research paper will get a free ticket and free accommodation. And I had just graduated, didn't have much money,
Yeah.
and I thought it would be a great way to meet more scholars and network for a free ticket. And I said, well, there's so many people presenting,
Yeah.
your paper had to also get accepted as well.
Mm.
So I went through the different topics, this and that. I saw abortion, and I said, okay, let me write on this topic. It was just more the idea that I felt that was a lot more relative,
Okay.
and something that will be more relatable to people. So I sit there, and I remember the deadline that came. I missed the deadline.
Mm.
They had an extension to the deadline. I missed that deadline too.
Oh wow.
So there was the third extension to the deadline, and it was one day before it, and the deadline extension was probably at like midnight or something.
Okay.
And I remember it was after Isha. I took about 7, 8 students with me to the library, and I said to them that I need about 40, 45 books. I will tell you the book's name, and you just have to pull out the certain chapter that I'm looking for.
Okay.
So that was what shaved off the most. I knew the books that I needed. I knew the places I need to reference. So I just walked into a library with them. And generally, these things would take a lot more time and a lot more effort. But because I was in a time crunch and I had students at my hand, we walked into a library. We had them just pulling out random books. And you had this huge stacks of like,
Yeah.
it was like a metropolitan of books that were there. And I had one youngster who was really good at proofreading and editing. He was a medical student who took a break, and I sat there going through 45 books,
Wow.
40 or 45 books, and I just went through every aspect of them, pulled out the content that I needed, formulated it. It was done actually overnight, and around I think sometime before Fajr is when I had submitted the final paper. So though that paper, though that the unique thing about that was that in Amja very elderly people presented. And by presenting that paper there, I was the youngest person in their history to present till now.
Mm.
And the next person who was the youngest was 10 years older than myself.
Mm.
So that was a very unique thing that I got. It was interesting is because when I arrived at the hotel, they didn't know I was the presenter. They actually told me to, just to go have a seat or something. And I was just waiting for my room and for my accommodation.
Yeah.
But that was more of the inspiration behind it. But generally speaking, uh, some of the fatwa that it takes us to write, it takes us weeks and weeks to write,
Mm.
plowing through so many books. And when we were studying in South Africa by our teacher, I remember one time a teacher gave me a ruling. And after I got up to look for it, he made a comment and he said, I know you're not going to find it, but I want you to do tawaf of the library a little bit. So it has its and the interesting thing about looking for a fatwa is not the answer to the fatwa, but the journey to the answer.
Mm.
While you're going through the book, while you're going through content, you're going to go across things and come across points that are going to come and you would not have seen had
Yeah.
it not been through the journey. So I think that's what people don't realize, that when online you just plug it in and you just get the answer.
Exactly. Yeah.
But from our background, we have to go through that journey of books. So you're
Mm.
discovering new rulings, new points, and new things that otherwise you would not have seen those passages before.
Mm. So let's get an idea of the types of kind of nowadays the questions that you're getting
Fiqh or
as a
fiction.
mufti. Fiqh or fiction, exactly, right? So this is amazing because this is something that you do on Instagram, right? Where like even it's difficult to keep up sometimes because on Instagram you have the stories
Yeah.
and your story turns into dots where you can like there's so many answers. It's like, oh my god, how am I going to get through all of this, right? So what are the kind of questions that you get nowadays? I mean, it could be on social media or it could be like formally in terms of as a mufti, like someone writes into you the kind of fatwas they're looking for. Give us an example of maybe the most common ones and maybe even like the most funniest or craziest and wackiest questions that you get.
So I'll tell you some of the common ones that I have. A lot of
Yeah.
people ask questions about personal
Right.
crisis of faith, crisis of dealing with other people, ma'ashara, how they are with their families, how they're with their spouses. A lot of people go through a dilemma
Mm.
of this identity crisis, that they're trying to grasp and figure out who they are, whether it may be from a religious perspective, from a social role, from a family role. That's a lot of questions surrounding there. That, what,
Mm.
I have this relative and they treat me in this capacity. How do I respond? Or that I'm going through these issues where I'm suffering from mental illness, and I went to some sheikh, and he gave me this dhikr to do, and I'm doing the dhikr, but I'm still having these issues that are
Mm.
going on in my mind. So there's you have a lot of these type of issues that happen. Uh, and then you have the standard fatwas that people ask you, right? The sheikh, what, if I'm traveling and I forgot to make my intention, and now it's Ramadan time, can I fast now because I've just landed in a town where the sun has already risen from,
Yeah.
right? Rulings of those capacity. Or then someone will ask me a question on uh, the, the it's just slipping my mind right now. The one where someone is in a vegetative state, and life, life. When you're in a hospital and you're
Yeah.
hospitalized, you have that life. What's that? The machine?
Life support machine.
Life support.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's a question that gets asked
I
very
see.
often.
Okay.
And unfortunately, that it's. I think that one of the toughest things in this job is when you have to counsel someone going through a divorce or a separation, or someone's family is breaking,
Mm.
and just that conversation, because you can, or condoling someone who's lost a family member.
Mm.
I had a friend who just passed away yesterday, Mufti
Mm.
Haris Mirza rahmatullahi alayhi, 24-year-old young man from a heart
Yeah.
attack.
Yeah. Subhanallah.
How do you even condole people?
Yeah.
How do you condole people when you yourself are hurting, right? So you have these challenges, and people don't see the humanized side of us.
Mm.
People see the sheikh side and the glamour and all of that,
Mm.
and but the pain that we also carry of going through everyone's suffering and just trying to tell everyone that everything's going to be okay. is also one of the most toughest things that people in our field have to do. Um, and in terms of comical questions and questions that people ask that are funny, those are you always get
Yeah.
that one strange question, Sheikh, can I put miswak on my cat? Right, like strange questions like why is your
Strange.
miswak in your cat's mouth anyway, right? So people will ask you very strange and very
Yeah.
interesting questions, but it's there. I won't mention the weird ones. It's just but
Yeah,
the
yeah.
strange
Just
ones, yeah,
we
definitely.
keep it censored for a bit, but
Keep it censored, yeah.
yeah, I guess you should. I guess you expect that because it's on Instagram. It's open to literally like anyone and everyone.
It's actually very less that I get the strange ones.
Okay.
A lot of them are really good questions. Those strange ones usually come to me on personal text, or someone
Okay.
calls me, and a student called me the other day, Sheikh, I'm in a warehouse and I see a jinn. And I'm just like, okay. I was like, I'll send my jinn there too. And he just tripped out even more. So, I mean, those are the. But Instagram, generally speaking, people ask some very genuine question. And they ask a
Yeah.
lot of question about personal struggles that they're having with their sexuality, with their own demons. And it's hard to go to a sheikh and say, Sheikh, I have a masturbation issue. I have an issue with this. I there's people who ask, I like I like the same gender. We had a person who was that was all that they were attracted to, and they needed genuine help. And there were people who suffered, and they were traumatized because they just didn't have anyone to talk to. So this Instagram platform, it's opened an area for people to express themselves, knowing that they won't be judged.
Yeah.
And I've met so many people. To them, the important thing is that they can express something, and they know that it just stays there, and there's that confidentiality. They can speak it out. Others will benefit, and they've gotten this burden off of their shoulder.
That's really important, actually. I think the open platform aspect of it is the most important because people have questions, like, and either they're gonna just Google it, like you said, and it comes up, or if they actually have someone to connect to who might just understand them, like the Prophet ﷺ, if he ever gave a fatwa, if he ever advised someone, he would look at the person and then offer the advice, not just like everyone just kind of just go along and do this. So even here in the
Yeah.
UK, like there are youngsters that when we open up the platforms, only when we give them that open platform, that's when they come out with all those questions. Other than that, they wouldn't go up to an imam. Like recently, you had all these questions coming in from youngsters, teenagers. They wouldn't have normally asked, but it's because we gave them the platform. They're like, right, shit, can I sell weed? They're just asking questions like,
The question one of them was, Sheikh,
Yeah.
do I get reward for giving a discount on weed to my Muslim brother
no.
in the month of Ramadan? And I'm like, Habibi, I was like, I think
In
you are
Ramadan?
holding. Yeah, he's like, brother, I'm doing it for the sake of Allah. Usually I don't give discounts, but in Ramadan, for the sake of Allah. So yeah,
Subhanallah.
those are like
Yeah,
the strangest.
You get those questions, yeah. So
But then since we're on the topic of Instagram, I'm gonna throw something at you.
Go on.
So I run an Instagram page, and you also, mashallah, run an
Sure.
Instagram page. You have one as a poet, and you have one as a nikah co. So it's
Right.
kind of romantic. Both of them, they sit together. What are one of the challenges you face in
oh, wow.
terms of
So
the
we've switched roles
we
here?
switched roles
Okay,
right now.
First time on Ilm Feed has happened.
We've switched roles on this one. So I mean, you have a nikah page, right? So I'm sure
Right.
you get a lot of DMs that say that, Sheikh, I'm interested in nikah, right? Or
Sure.
you have this fitna side to it,
Uh-huh.
right? So what is your advice to these young Instagrammers and YouTubers who are kind of getting that celebrity? They want that fame, and a lot of it is because you want to go through and see which, mashallah, hijabi sister and or non-hijabi sister
Yeah.
is liking it, or a sister who's running some motivational quotes, and she's looking at which halal boy is going. So what are your advice to people who are raising in this platform?
So just to clarify the question that you're asking, so these are people who are looking to get. They haven't found someone.
So
They're looking
there's
to get
people
married.
who are on the social media platform
Yeah.
that are representing Islam.
Okay.
At the same time, there's this aspect of people also reaching out to them, and at times they may be in a capacity where they're looking, and at times they may not be.
Okay.
Right?
Okay, I see.
It could be both angles. But is there an appropriation of people to go into with people who are holding an Islamic platform? And B, is that if it is, what's the way of kind of protecting yourself and kind of keeping that cushion so that you don't jeopardize what you are representing?
I see. It's a good question, Sheikh. Thank you for asking. and putting me on the spot on my own show. But
You said it was going to be an interesting one.
the way I see it, there's two aspects to this, right? There's two ways you can go about it. Number one is that I think if we look at the people who are actually asking the questions, that's my first message to the people that ask. You need to know who you're asking. Number one, just because you have a Islamic reminder account, someone who's running an account, and just because it has 20, 30,000 followers, and because they're posting a hadith every single day, that doesn't mean they're the person to go to ask for advice, right? Because they're probably just out of the goodness of their heart sharing a few quotes here and there, and you're just trying to get some reward, but that doesn't make them qualified to answer questions. So that's my first message to those people that are asking, is like, verify who you're asking, make sure it is someone who's a scholar, a person of knowledge, a mufti, etc. And then the people that are actually now receiving the questions, now it's all about, if you're in a dilemma here, because you're getting people who are asking questions. If you're qualified to do so, answer the questions, right? But then it's like, where do you draw the line in terms of
I was
conversation?
talking more about people sliding into your DMs.
People sliding into DMs, what,
Like,
directly?
Directly.
like,
How do you protect yourself? Because from a platform where you have people who are attracted to you,
Right.
and they're sliding and they're trying to get that. I'm not asking just normal questions.
yeah, okay.
I'm talking
Okay,
about
okay. Just directly, like,
Oh yeah.
straight up,
As you got to say, what's your advice to them? It's because, mashallah, you run a nikah page, and you're, mashallah, Romeo, right? You have all this poetry. You're the Sheikh Spear, right? This is the Sheikh Shabir, right? That should be your handle.
Yeah.
So what's your advice to people to protect themselves so that they don't make the mistake while they're trying to? As my teacher would say, he said something very beautiful. He said that when it gets muddy, even an elephant slips. The best of us can make mistakes. So what's your advice to people?
I think from the discussions that I've had with my teachers and with other people of knowledge, the main thing is always what your intention is when you're actually answering. So, like, I'm telling you nowadays, I'm just being straight up. Nowadays, you can tell. The moment someone messages you, you can. There's a red alarm. There's a red alert.
The red heart.
Yeah, it could be that, right? That could be the beginning of the conversation. You know when the conversation, like, is going to lead elsewhere. So then it's up to you now. Like, you're in control. You get to navigate that conversation. If you're like, "Assalamu alaikum, okay, how are you doing?" Right, why are you entertaining that discussion for, if you know where it's going to lead to? So I think for me is like, listen, what's your intention when you go into it? If you think that so for me, the way I do it is I would filter it out. When someone messages me, it might be for so many different reasons. It might just be to say, mashallah, like, I love the podcast. I love the recent podcast episode with Mufti MWK. So I'll be like, yeah, jazakallah khair, thank you. Hit his DMs as well, you know. I might just do that, right? Okay. Or it might be someone like, I want to book you for something. So there might be a professional aspect to it. But then the moment where it's just like, hi, hello, how are you? Then I know it's just like, if someone was serious, if someone wanted to like, go down the professional route, they would have gone down the professional route. So for me, I know how to filter. Like, after a while, you get experience with these things. You know how to filter these things out. My general advice to the people would just be, just don't take advantage of the following or of the position that you have. Don't take advantage. Like we said, everyone can slip, but just make sure your intentions are in check, and make sure that you get the right experience in terms of filtering these things out. Because everyone wants to be innocent about these things. No, okay, let me just see. Maybe it's going to lead elsewhere.
Maybe it's the one.
I want to give maybe it's the one. Maybe it's the one. But wallahu alam, I think for me, I don't want to say too much right now because you're the mufti here and you're trying to put me on the spot. So how do you, mufti? How do you deal with the DMs that you must be getting a lot? How do you personally deal with it? Mashallah, you must be, you have the American accent, you've got everything there, you've got the talent. So how do you, I can just imagine, subhanAllah, if I just check your phone right now.
I think you're getting revenge right now. What you said was just spot on, right? You know where the conversation is going.
Sure.
And you're in control. You know the steps you're going in. You know that the people that are reaching out to you, and you know that, are they reaching out holistically, or is there a different purpose? Is a different idea behind it? And if there is a different idea or purpose behind it, is it a legitimate individual you can invest in? If this is a legitimate relation, I have friends who are married off of Instagram. Like, I have a guy,
Okay.
I know like few of them married to girls in Morocco and these random, I'm like, how do you find them? And they're like, they were just over friendship, right? That they sent some message and it connected. But these were legitimate people who reached out and they had a legitimate purpose. I think the mistake and the fault lies in when it becomes excessive discussion and you lose focus of the idea that we're here to actually progress something, and not just to have a bay on the side, or someone just to chill with, or just to talk with, or someone just to be there or to snap with, but someone who's legitimately there that you're connected to. And that the idea is that I want to progress this and make this halal for us. So you have these diameters you have to set. And I advise people in my community that there's two ways of setting diameters. Number one, always have a third party. It could be your friend, her friend, doesn't matter whose friend it is, but someone who has these diameters that's there as the go-to person to know how far the conversation is going. Number two is that set time frames, that I don't talk after 9 p.m. or I don't talk after 7, 8, because there are certain times of the day where the conversation takes its turn. There's a 3 a.m. conversation. There's a 3 p.m. conversation.
Yeah.
Right. So it has its value when you're able to kind of make these type of time differences. You're able to kind of guide conversations. You're able to kind of limit it. It doesn't turn into a daily aspect where you're just is just like a relationship without it pursuing somewhere. I think that's problematic. But if you put these measures in place, then inshallah, because the thing is, the reality is that there are thousands and thousands, if not millions, of people getting married on social media, right, across the globe, across the Islamic faith, and across this, and I think we have to have a honest conversation on how to navigate the fiqh of social media. Right, that because it has its good potential and it doesn't have its good potential, and just to tell them that, oh no, astaghfirullah, it's not going to work. It's we're in the 21st century. I can connect with anybody. I mean, I knew you before we ever met because of social media. Our relationship began a long time ago. So you can't you have to have that realization, understand that, okay, there has to be more discipline and appropriate measures that we are moving forward on.
That's a brilliant answer, and I think really in terms of like everything you've just mentioned there as well. Oh, by the way, just to add in that for everyone listening and watching this, that there's another beloved Sheikh of us from the US, Sheikh Hasib Noor. Episode 12, we had a full-on discussion about like relationships and gender interaction and stuff, so that would be brilliant to refer to. But I really loved your answer, and that's another thing that I wanted to ask was, because I mentioned it before in terms of everything's developing nowadays. So how do you as a mufti deal with that? Because it's not just the same old questions. Okay, do I give zakat on this many sheep or something? Now it's like it's developing, even in terms of like in terms of the Islamic finance world. For example, you have the forex, you got the trading, you got this, that, new apps nowadays, etc. So how do you deal with that? Does that mean that you also have to go out and continue your own research and continue your own study? So how do you deal with the more contemporary issues?
So there's two levels to it, right? One is your own research, and one is reflecting with your contemporaries or your seniors.
Yeah.
And our tradition is filled with a sanad, with a chain, right? There's a hierarchy in terms of educational knowledge that one generation passes to the other. So if I get a mas'ala or a ruling or a fiqh aspect on a certain ruling, I would do my research, but then I would also reflect it along with my seniors and my contemporaries. And in the situation where my research is accepted by my contemporaries and my seniors, I will profess that research of mine. There have been issues and there have been rulings that I have stood on an opposite spectrum than my seniors and my contemporaries. But that ruling I keep too close to my chest and I don't express it. It's because I am just one man, I'm just one person. And the Prophet ﷺ has advocated us to be with the jama'ah, with the community. So I will try my best, and hopefully, inshallah, there is none of mine, and there won't be any just one perspective or opinion that goes against mainstream ideology and philosophy, especially when it comes to ritualistic actions and things. So I try to stay on the safer end, that whatever research I have reflected with them, make sure that they keep me in line. Is because, as they say in Surah Yusuf, فَوْقَ كُلِّ ذِي عِلْمٍ عَلِيمٍ, there's always a more knowledgeable person above you, right? And you have to check your knowledge's currency with someone else and see, is this currency valid or not. Otherwise, you'll be putting a currency in the market that actually holds no weight, and it's actually deception. So that checks and balance is very important.
Definitely. In terms of online, because again, the whole Instagram thing and Google and everything else, in terms of just giving online fatwas, for example, whether it's from yourself or anyone, could that also be a negative thing for people from the outside who's looking for a fatwa? Because they're, imagine the first result that comes up on Google, I don't know any better. I click on it and I see, for example, X thing is haram or is halal. Let's say if it's not that balanced, because with everything we could just say there's ikhtilaf, there's ikhtilaf, ikhtilaf. So could that also be a negative thing with people? We're talking about now the audience, the general audience that are looking for a fatwa, and then the first thing they do is they go online and then they find something, an answer, and then they kind of disregard everything else, all of the research that went into it, all of the ikhtilaf, the difference in opinion. What would your advice be to people who are looking for a fatwa? Is it better that they just go to their local imam, for example, or should they continue looking into the online?
When you're Googling it up and you're checking something on Google, why are you checking online? You're looking for something reliable, right?
Yeah.
Reliability is key.
Yeah.
It's integrity. We live in an era that Facebook, what is it? MySpace also got hacked recently, right?
I don't know.
MySpace
I didn't know people use MySpace still.
Oh, yeah. There's something happened with the MySpace recently. I forgot what it was, but Facebook. These are organizations that have like crazy security measures and things to make sure that there's no data breach. There's claims that our voter system was in the U.S. was hacked by Russians, or the DNC, like a whole political parties. Their emails were hacked by a foreign government.
Yeah.
In an era where cybersecurity and cyber warfare is the new thing, there's no guarantee that the stuff that you are looking online, though it may be from a sheikh, though it may be from a person, is actually credibly written there, because it takes a person very quickly to alter words here and there. We are still in the beginning, the infancy, but put 30 years, 40 years down the road, someone goes in and hacks the entire system with all the books, there's no reliability left. So we resort to the original traditional method, which is getting from the sheikh and the scholar. Now, in the absence of not having any sheikh or scholar, I was talking to a friend just today, and they were like, "There's in their community, they have nobody there that's good company, right? They have no one to go to, they have no one to learn from. What do they do then? Okay, then for you, watch these videos, watch these halaqas, follow these accounts. For you, it's great, right? But for the mass group of people, don't resort to this." Right? Don't resort to this superficial system of knowledge, but go and get that knowledge from chest to chest, because it has two benefits. One is the minor benefit, which is the knowledge. Yeah. And you know what the major benefit is? Good company. Good company is so powerful that the dog that spent few moments in Ashab al-Kahf's time was also given the 300-year sleep. Suhba is so powerful that the Sahaba, they were everything, but they're termed Sahabis, companions, just because of company. The Sahaba used to travel somewhere and say, Allahumma razaqni jalisa salih. Oh Allah, give me great company, give me good company. We forget the value of how much good company reflects on us. Allah says, Ya ayyuhal ladina amanu ittaqullah. Have taqwa. That is the purpose. But Allah doesn't stop there. He says, Kunu ma'as sadiqeen. Because having taqwa is the easy part. Maintaining it is the tough part. And that's why Allah says, be with the righteous. Because you'll maintain it and you'll grow it. And as they say, diamond cut diamond. People make people. So it just appeases you for the moment, for the time, but it is not the answer. So I think that if a true student of knowledge or a true searcher of knowledge should go and reflect to an individual. I actually have a rule in my community that you can't, when I'm now serving as a resident scholar, that you can't text me your question. Habibi, I want to see you. You're in my community and you're texting me. I know you have my number. You're more than welcome to have it and we can go. But come and see me. Create that love and muhabba. Show the qadr and the value. I read in a book about 12, 13 years ago that Imam Abu Hanifa rahmatullahi would never answer a question while walking.
Oh, wow.
He would have a person sit, value it, and then answer it. And he would never unsolicitedly throw his answer on anyone. He would only have it to seekers. So there's this level of barakah. And inshallah, over the next few days, I'm going to do a talk on Musa and Khadr alayhi salam and the etiquettes. And Allah gives this whole lesson of how to study in the story of Musa and Khadr. Yeah. And I think this reflection on that and that aspect, that Allah could have just downloaded the information to Musa alayhi salam. But he says, no, Musa, travel to Madrasa Khadriyah and spend time there, get that suhbah there, and then come back from that aspect. So this journey of knowledge is, even Shaykh Abdul Fattah Ghudda rahimahullah writes about this in Safahat and Sabr al-Ulama, that when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created Adam alayhi salam, he said that if you want to know your tahiyyah, go to the malaika. Though later on he passes the test, but Allah shows that even the first methodology of getting knowledge is safar for ilm. travel for knowledge and get it and bring it together.
Amazing points, and this leads perfectly on to my next point, which is like the elephant in the room to to address those people who are not quite there yet, right? So those people who maybe have actually not even studied, they're reliant on like the online fatwas, or people who are very early on in their talab al-ilm, in their own journey of seeking knowledge, right? But nowadays, because of the accessibility to social media, you have your Twitter account, you have your Facebook, you have your Instagram, these people are now coming out and like literally giving fatwa. Literally, they're giving fatwa. Or, they're like, because they're so early on, they haven't experienced life. Like, mashallah, you've traveled to so many different countries around the world and you've studied, you've worked for it. But a lot of people, they haven't traveled, they haven't seen the outside world, and they've only seen one side of things. So what they're now doing is they're imposing their views on others. So, there's terms for them nowadays. There's terms like people come up with and coin, etc., right? But what is your advice to these people that are just issuing fatwa, or it's not even maybe it's not even their own fatwa, they're just literally quoting XYZ and throwing it out there on social media? What's your advice to these people?
There's three things to this. Number one
Yeah.
is that first I need advice myself before I give it to anyone else.
Yeah.
But just thoughts that I'm thinking out loud.
Yeah.
Is that you asked you asked about two questions, right? Number one was the type of people that have not really reached there, but they're also seeking knowledge.
Yeah.
And the second is those who are on their journey and giving fatwas without actually being in that position. Right? There's two different aspects. The first thing is someone who's just trying to get closer to Allah. They have no other option. For that person, yes, go down that social media route, go down that sheikh's route, go down someone who feels connected, because it's a step. But, which leads into the next question.
Yeah.
The speaker themselves can only solve this dilemma. As our teacher used to say, our job is to connect people to Allah, not to ourselves. So if I have that platform and I'm just there promoting myself the entire time, and I'm not reminding people to go back to local scholarship, and I'm not reminding people and connecting people, and I'm coming and visiting your masjid in your community, and I'm just giving a lecture and mashallah people are connected to me, but I don't redirect them that, hey, listen, you have an amazing imam over here, you have a gem over here, learn from them. I'm there to blame. I'm the person who's the problem. It's because I'm there creating this culture. And the only ones who can dismantle the culture are the ones who are creating the culture. Right? So this philosophy, because we travel everywhere and I see, and it happens all the time. One of the things that I try to do all the time wherever I travel is if there's a local imam or something, I try to make it a point of establishing that person's respect and honor and reminding the community that I'm just here for a moment. Whereas this person is dedicated to you. They're a pillar of your community. And lastly, those people who are just posting or quoting, Ibn al-Qayyim has an amazing book. Forget the entire book. Just the title will bring shivers in you. I'Lamul Muwaqqi'in. A reminder to those who sign off that Allah is above you. You're signing off a fatwa. You're giving the authority that I'm representing Allah's opinion here. It's the most toughest thing. There's a reason why we don't take our lone opinions and express them. Is because we fear that what if we are quoting Allah wrong? And that is why there's a concept of elders and there's a concept of sanad, that to keep it as authentic as possible in that capacity. So it's just about having that taqwa and realizing that the Prophet ﷺ spoke about two types of scholars. Ulama al-khair and ulama al-su, the good and the bad. And you have to ask yourself, which one am I? Am I the one who's eloquent, but iman is stuck to my throat? And when people come and tell us, mashallah, lecture was good, it makes me shiver. It's because it reminds me of those ahadith of the Prophet ﷺ, where he says, in the end of times, people like you will stand before people. And their tongues will be sweet and their words will be like emphatic. And then what? So it's a reminder to remind myself that I have to work on myself. And not having checks and balances is where a person goes misguided. And there has to be a level that you have to understand that someone is above you. When you think you are the biggest one, then that's takabbur at its finest. That's kibr and pride at its finest. That I know, no one else knows. Mufti Quran once said 10 years ago, very beautifully. He said, when you think your opinion supersedes everyone else's, there's a hint of arrogance in it. So that would be my thoughts on that.
If we go down a level from fatwa and giving your own opinion on things, and let's just say, for example, the concept of just nasiha, like you just want to advise someone. You're not saying this is this is halal haram. You're just saying like, this is my advice. Now, there's an issue that I've seen a lot, especially nowadays, which is, for example, because in the day and age of there's a lot of Muslim influencers, bloggers, scholars, leaders, etc., and they're online and they have that exposure. If they slip and they make a mistake, which everyone is bound to do, like you've already said, everyone's human, right? Then it's like there's a whole army that's after them, using the same platform that they've used to kind of go after them, or they made a mistake and certain people, they feel the responsibility to now advise those people. So you have two camps now. You have those who say, listen, just advise them in private, do what you can. And then you have the other camp, which is like, no, if they've done something publicly, I'm going to go out publicly and address this. So I wanted to kind of get your thoughts on this. It's more one of those like modern contemporary issues to do very much with social media, as to how we can kind of address this. Is it okay to just publicly kind of, I wouldn't say name and shame, but to publicly advise people? Or what do you think is the best ideal scenario, or the best route to take in this case?
There's two things in here. The first thing is that the reality of fame, and what is anyone who's trying to get fame.
Yeah.
Right. We get famous. What do they say? People spend, a celebrity is someone who spends their life getting known, and then spends the rest of their life wearing sunglasses and having an umbrella above to be unknown, so people don't reach out to them.
Yeah.
There's two poems in Urdu that I'll share with you and I'll translate, which will really reflect and capture the whole idea of fame. The reality of fame is, jab jeete to thaliyan, jab haare to galiyan. When things are going well, people will clap. And when the moment things slip, everyone will curse you. This is the reality of what fame is. And number two, बहुत मशहूर होता जा रहा हूँ, मैं खुद से दूर होता जा रहा हूँ, सुना है कि अब कोई ठोकर लगेगी, बहुत मगरूर होता जा रहा हूँ. The poet says, I'm becoming very well known to other people, but I'm becoming unknown to myself.
SubhanAllah.
I'm going to make a slip. You know why? It's because I have begun to deceive myself, forget other people.
Wow.
It's the reality of fame.
Yeah.
And that's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, for the student of knowledge, is the complete opposite.
Yeah.
In the dunya, when you go for fame, you get a red carpet, you get paparazzi, and you get people retweeting you, and you're trending.
Yeah.
And what are people looking for? The moment you make a mistake, they slaughter you. But the student of knowledge, when he steps out, doesn't get a red carpet, he gets a white carpet. Angel's wings.
Yeah.
He doesn't have a paparazzi of people talking to him. He has the fish in the sea, the insects in the ground, and the birds in the sky doing dua. What is their dua? That, Ya Allah, when this person makes a mistake, forgive them.
Mashallah.
They're doing istighfar. Whereas the opposite end is looking for your mistakes.
Yeah.
This end, as a student of knowledge, what is it? Is the complete opposite. Okay. In terms of admonishing people, there's two rules. Rule number one is, La yuhibbullah al-jahra bisu illa man zulim. If someone has been oppressed, zulum has been done, zulum, then you don't hide that and you express it out. Someone has been abused, someone has been raped, someone has been in that capacity, yes, you express it outside. I'm not talking about consensual and all that. I'm talking about abuse, right? Yeah. Someone does a wrong action, it's consensual, that's a different topic. I'm talking about where abuse is taking place. In abuse, Allah says that person does not have the right to have a hidden door, is because we need to stop the abuse. The second thing is that the Prophet ﷺ said, Al-mu'minu mir'atul mu'min. A believer is a mirror to another believer. When you look inside the mirror, you're mashallah a handsome person, right? But someone like me that looks inside the mirror. When we look inside and we see our defects, who tells us the defects that's on us? When I look in the mirror.
You're getting it yourself, really.
But where do I see it? I see it in the mirror.
Yeah, in the mirror, yeah.
When the mirror tells me my defects, how loud does he tell it to me? How long does he tell?
You don't hear anything.
The mirror tells you your defects silently, quietly, privately.
I like that.
And the Prophet ﷺ said, Al-mu'minu mir'atul mu'min. The believer is a mirror to another believer. Now you get on the mic and now you think that, oh no, I need to go and shame this person. I need to put them right. They're a public figure. Now what did you do? That person just stopped from sin, but you've also increased the ghiba in the ummah. There's thousands of people in their homes. What are they doing? They're doing ghiba of that person. Now that person who was zalim and an oppressor became a madloom, and now they're getting reward from everybody else. لا تظهر الشماتة لأخيك فيرحمه الله ويبتليك. Don't express happiness and try to exploit people's mistakes. Allah may stop them from committing the sins and then put you in the same problem inside. And how many of us, what happens? We just become people who backbite. Remember one thing: scholars are humans; they will make mistakes. But إنما يخشى الله من عباده العلماء. If the man has disobeyed Allah, he also knows how to make Allah happy. The best thing, if dhulm has taken place, you hold them accountable.
Yeah.
But natural human mistakes that take place that any other human can do, ask for their forgiveness, hold them in their position, and don't apotheosize anybody. That's also another problem. We apotheosize people. My sheikh is the greatest sheikh in the world, right? Take everyone as a human individual and hold everyone in that capacity.
I think that's that analogy as well was brilliant, the mirror one. And I think, Sheikh, we need to do a different episode with just your poetry. I think people love it. Your Urdu, your Arabic poetry is beautiful, mashallah. We're coming slowly towards the end of the episode, though I'm having a lot of I'm learning a lot from you, mashallah, and having a lot of fun as well, hearing your poetry and benefiting, mashallah. So just to kind of to wrap up the last few things, which is one thing that you've mentioned, and I know it will take a long time to discuss these things, but in terms of your travels as well, I just wanted to touch on that, because do you feel like, because mashallah you've traveled all across, and maybe you can mention some of the places that you've been to and experienced, but do you feel like by traveling and by going to different places and meeting new people, this is in the shoes of a mufti, that kind of opens your eyes up to now new communities, new problems, and do you feel like that helps you? Because a lot of the time what happens is, of course, most definitely, especially as students of knowledge, we should benefit from our local community, but then we don't travel and we only see one side of things. So just to touch on really your travels, where you've been to, and just the kind of things that you've learned and how that's developed you as someone who is now in this position.
The first thing I want to say, I just want to clarify that the mirror analogy I gave, my teacher told me that. It wasn't from my side. Just want to clarify that.
Brilliant.
The second thing is that, alhamdulillah, I traveled quite a bit, been to over 20 countries. And since you like poetry, कभी अर्श पर कभी फर्श पर कभी उनके दर कभी दर बदर गम आशिकी तेरा शुक्रिया मैं कहाँ कहाँ से गुजर गया कभी रास्तों में तन्हा कभी रूबरू सहरा मैं जुनून का हम सफ़र हूँ मेरा कोई घर नहीं. The poet says कभी अर्श पर कभी फर्श पर. Sometimes I'm in a 5-star hotel. कभी फर्श पर. Sometimes I'm on the floor. कभी उनके दर कभी दर बदर गम आशिकी तेरा शुक्रिया. Sometimes I'm somewhere, sometimes I'm nowhere. He says, heartbreak, when my heart was shattered, and the lessons I've learned, tera shukriya, I thank you. Because had it not been for my heartbreak and been alone in a journey, I would have not learned the lessons that I've learned. So thank you for breaking my heart, because you made me into a person that I was not, and I've traversed the world because of it. Anyway, so that was just because you said the poetry thing, so I mentioned that. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, وَهَلْ مِنْكُمْ إِلَّا وَارِدُهَا, that every one of us will cross over Jahannam. Think about it. You're going to Jannah, but why do you have to see Jahannam? Because it's in human nature to be inquisitive and curious. We've heard about Jahannam. We've seen this. We want to see this horror movie. I don't want the jinn to attack me, but I want to see the jinn movie. I want the jinn, but I want to hear the jinn stories. Right? That thriller, that horror, that scary movie, it has a certain appetite to it. So even when we're going to Jannah, we cross over Jahannam to view it. And Allah says, فَسِيرُوا فِي الْأَرْضِ, travel and see, فَانْظُرْ كَيْفَ كَانَ عَاقِبًا, look at what the results of people were. So when you travel through places and you see, they say that traveling makes you speechless and then turns you into a storyteller. So every country had its own amazing reflection to it. I was just in Cairo, standing before the pyramids, and understanding that 3,500 years there was no structure on earth that was larger than this, and this was the largest man-made structure. Going inside it, that was its own feeling. walking through the streets of Uzbekistan in Tashkent, Samarkand, Bukhara, and thinking that this is where Imam Bukhari traveled all the way to go and teach hadith to Imam Muslim, and this is where Imam Tirmidhi traveled to meet Imam Bukhari, and this is what this happened, this is where Genghis Khan came. That was his own reflection. To go into China and Hong Kong and see the millions of Muslims that are there, and to remind yourself that there are far more Muslims in China than there are in the entire Western Hemisphere. Subhanallah. It's a reflection, right? It's a reflection. Going to India, going to the 25 cities or 30 cities that I did, the villages that I did, and went and seen that these were the people who when the British influence was there, these were the same structures and the individuals that witnessed that entire era. To go and just to soak in the different cultures, it's easy to understand this sect of Islam and call this sect of Islam, but I have went with my own eyes and have seen the birthplaces of every one of those areas. And it makes you understand people remarkably. Yeah. And it makes you understand that, listen, people are not as simple as this is their opinion, this is their view. Put yourself in their shoes. And then you meet the most amazing people in the world. Wallahi, I have found generosity in the villages of Sylhet and in the villages of Nanota. And wallahi, I didn't find it in the mansions of New York and in the mansions of Chicago. So the stories of that aspect is just, and I think people should travel. There's so much you can learn. I've actually learned more fiqh from my teacher by traveling with him than I did studying within a book. So me and him, we traveled together to China, the Grand Mufti of South Africa. We went to China, Hong Kong, Palestine, Jordan, Dubai, Saudi Arabia. We went all over. And that proximity and that time gave that opportunity to ask questions. That's why I advise a lot of youth. Go with your imam, go with your sheikh, travel somewhere, go in a little group, and you'll learn so much in just that journey. They say you can't claim to know someone until you haven't lived with them, done business with them, or traveled with them.
Brilliant. So that means we need to have another, inshallah, next time you're here,
Inshallah.
just to gain an insight into all of your traveling, inshallah. It sounds amazing. And Mufti Muhammad Wasim Khan, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you. And of course, this is for everyone listening and watching, that Mufti MWK, you can find him on the social media if you need the fatwa. Then he's there for you, inshallah. But I want to also give a fatwa on Sheikh's behalf and tell everyone that you must subscribe to the Feed channel.
It's wajib.
It's wajib.
It's wajib. It's wajib.
Sheikh has said it.
Yeah.
Sheikh has spoken. There you go. And the iTunes as well. Keep up to date with all of our episodes. Sheikh, Jazakallah khair. Thank you so much.
Khair. Thank you so much to Feed and to yourself, Sheikh Shabir, for the amazing interview. I've been watching these podcasts since you've been having them. People have also told me that look at how their podcasts are, and these are really good things. You should do them. And just so happened that when I came over here, you had mentioned, may Allah reward you for your love and your muhabbat and your akhlaq and your character, and ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bless you and your parents and your family and allow you to earn the du'as of your parents.
Ameen. Ameen. Wa yakum jazakumullah khairan, Sheikh. Thank you so much, and thank you to everyone who's tuned in. We hope you've benefited. We've discussed so many different topics here, from the beginning where he discussed the history behind these terminologies, right, subhanAllah, all the way to the end where he's given an insight into his travels. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless Mufti MWK. We hope to have him back soon. And to everyone else, inshallah, take care of yourselves. We'll hopefully be back with another episode very soon. From your host, Shabir, this is the Feed podcast. See you all soon, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.